24 hours before I was supposed to say I do, I discovered a velvet box containing emerald earrings on my vanity. Beautiful, poisonous emeralds I was deathly allergic to, and an email from our wedding planner confirming the last-minute addition of Vanessa Winters to our guest list, my fiancé Garrett's ex-girlfriend who had shattered his heart when she moved to Paris 5 years ago, whose name he still sometimes murmured in his sleep, and who had now sent me jewelry that would leave my skin blistered and raw, all while Garrett had secretly added her to our wedding without a word to me, the pieces clicking together with the sickening clarity that the man I was about to marry had been harboring secrets that threatened to unravel everything I thought we were building together. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, staring at the emerald earrings as though they might sprout fangs and bite me. The plush hotel suite that had felt so luxurious just moments ago now seemed to be closing in around me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Maybe this was all a mistake. Maybe Vanessa had reached out to Garrett to congratulate him, and in typical people-pleasing fashion, he'd impulsively invited her. Maybe the earrings were from someone else entirely. But then, why wouldn't he have told me? My phone buzzed with a text from Laurel, my maid of honor. 5 minutes away. Can't wait to see you and celebrate. I needed to pull myself together. 20 people, our closest friends and family, were about to gather for our rehearsal dinner, and I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. I slipped the velvet box into my clutch and checked my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked composed on the surface. Sleek blonde updo, carefully applied makeup, cream silk jumpsuit that Garrett had said made me look elegant as hell when I'd tried it on. But her eyes held a question she wasn't sure she wanted answered. Another text from Laurel. Lobby now. Coming up. I took a final deep breath and unlocked the hotel room door, then walked to the elevator bank to meet her. When the doors slid open, Laurel burst out in a cloud of perfume and excitement. Bride alert, she squealed, wrapping me in a tight hug. You look amazing. Are you ready for your last night as a single woman? I managed to smile. As ready as I'll ever be. Laurel narrowed her eyes, scrutinizing my face. She'd been my best friend since our freshman year of college, and she knew me better than almost anyone. What's wrong? Nothing, I lied, leading her back toward the suite. Just pre-wedding jitters. She didn't look convinced, but before she could press further, the elevator opened again, delivering my other bridesmaids, my sister Madeline and Garrett's sister Bree, in a flurry of excitement and shopping bags. Emergency lip gloss run, Madeline explained, holding up a Sephora bag. Bree forgot hers. Because someone, Bree said pointedly, nudging my sister, insisted we stop for just one quick drink that turned into 2 margaritas. Their banter washed over me as we entered the suite, where a bottle of champagne waited on ice. While they exclaimed over the room and took selfies by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, I poured the champagne with mechanical precision, my mind racing. I needed to confront Garrett, but not here, not now, not with everyone watching. Earth to Ellie, Laurel said, waving a hand in front of my face. I asked if you want us to help with your hair touch-up. Sorry, I said, handing her a glass. Miles away. Hair's fine, but thanks. Toast time, Madeline declared, raising her glass. To Ellie and Garrett. May tomorrow be everything you've dreamed of, and may your marriage be even better than the wedding. To Ellie and Garrett, Bree and Laurel echoed, clinking their glasses against mine. I took a sip, the bubbles nearly choking me. Was tomorrow what I'd dreamed of? Was marrying Garrett what I wanted if he was still hung up on Vanessa? The questions swirled in my mind like the champagne in my glass. My phone buzzed with a text from Garrett, at the restaurant with the guys. See you there in 30? Can't wait to see my beautiful almost wife. My stomach clenched. His words seemed sincere, but what did they mean in light of what I'd discovered? Ellie. Seriously, what is going on with you? Laurel asked, pulling me aside while Madeline and Bree debated earrings. You look like you've seen a ghost. The earrings. I reached for my clutch and pulled out the velvet box, opening it for Laurel to see. These were delivered to the room today, I said quietly. No note. They're gorgeous, Laurel breathed, reaching to touch one. But you don't seem happy about them. They're emeralds. I'm allergic to the metal used in emerald settings. Garrett knows this. Laurel frowned. Maybe he forgot? Or maybe they're from someone else? I pulled up Marin's email on my phone and handed it to her. Read this. Her eyes widened as she scanned the message. Vanessa Winters? Isn't that his ex? I confirmed. The love of his life before me. At least, that's what I thought she was. Before him. Holy shit, Laurel whispered, glancing to make sure Madeline and Bree couldn't hear us. He invited her to your wedding without telling you? That's… Exactly, I said, taking back my phone. And I think the earrings are from her. They're exactly my style, except for the fact that I can't wear them without breaking out in hives. What are you going to do? I closed the velvet box and returned it to my clutch. I'm going to get through this rehearsal dinner without causing a scene. Then I'm going to have a very serious conversation with my fiancé. Laurel squeezed my hand. I'm here for you, whatever happens. If you need me to create a diversion so you can talk to him privately, just give me the signal. Despite everything, I smiled. What's the signal? I'll know it when I see it, she said with a wink, before turning serious again. But really, Ellie, this doesn't necessarily mean anything terrible. There could be an explanation. I nodded, wishing I could believe that. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. Let's just get through tonight. The ride to the restaurant passed in a blur. I sat wedged between Madeline and Laurel in the back of the rideshare, nodding at appropriate intervals as they discussed the bachelorette weekend from the previous month. My mind, however, was rehearsing what I would say to Garrett. How do you ask your fiancé, the night before your wedding, if he's still in love with his ex? Castelli's, an upscale Italian restaurant with a private dining room overlooking the river, had been Garrett's choice for the rehearsal dinner. As we approached, I could see guests already gathering in the warmly lit space. My parents, elegant and beaming with pride. Garrett's parents, more reserved but equally pleased. Our friends from college, from work, from the community theater, where we'd met while building sets for A Midsummer Night's Dream 3 years ago, and there, in the center of it all, was Garrett. Tall, with dark curly hair and the kind of smile that had made me say yes to coffee after that first tech rehearsal. He was laughing at something his best man Ryan had said, his head thrown back in that carefree way I loved. How could someone who looked so genuine be hiding something so significant? He spotted me in the doorway and his face lit up with what seemed like genuine joy. He excused himself from Ryan and made his way to me, threading through guests with practiced ease. There's my bride, he said, pulling me into an embrace that felt both familiar and suddenly foreign. You look stunning, Elle. Thanks, I managed, breathing in his cologne, the same one I'd given him for his birthday 6 months ago. Can we talk privately for a minute? A flicker of something, confusion, concern, guilt, crossed his face, but he nodded. Of course. Mom reserved a small office for coats and gifts. We can step in there. He led me past the bar, his hand warm on the small of my back as several guests called out greetings. I smiled and waved automatically, feeling like an actress in a play where everyone knew their lines but me. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The small office was mercifully empty and quiet after the happy clamor of the dining room. Garrett closed the door and turned to me, his expression now definitely concerned. What's going on, Elle? You seem upset. I took a steadying breath and reached into my clutch, pulling out the velvet box and opening it. Did you send me these? He looked genuinely confused. No, I mean, they're beautiful, but they're emeralds, I said flatly. I'm allergic to the metal used in emerald settings. You know this. Right, of course, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, a gesture I knew meant he was uncomfortable. I wouldn't have bought you emeralds. Did they come with a note? Maybe they're from your parents or something? They're not from my parents. They know about my allergy, too. I set the box on a nearby desk and pulled out my phone. But that's not what I really wanted to talk about. I got this email from Marin today. I displayed the email, watching his face as he read it. The color drained from his features, and he swallowed hard. Ellie, I can explain. Please do, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Explain why you invited your ex-girlfriend to our wedding without telling me. He ran a hand through his curls, a nervous habit I usually found endearing. Now it just made me want to scream. She's in town for a fashion event. She reached out yesterday to congratulate me. It's been years since we've talked, and I don't know. I thought it would be nice to include her, to show there are no hard feelings. No hard feelings, I repeated. On whose part, exactly? Because I'm feeling quite a few hard feelings right now, Garrett. I should have told you, he admitted, looking appropriately contrite. It was impulsive and I didn't think it through. I'm sorry. It was a reasonable explanation, too reasonable, and it didn't explain one crucial thing. How did she know about the wedding? How did she know how to contact you? And why would she send me earrings I can't wear? Garrett's expression shifted, the contrite apology morphing into something more defensive. What makes you think the earrings are from her? Who else would they be from? Someone who knows my taste but not my allergies. Someone who's suddenly back in your life enough to be invited to our wedding at the last minute. I crossed my arms, waiting. He sighed heavily, leaning against the desk. We've been in touch for a while now, since she moved back from Paris 6 months ago. 6 months. While we were choosing wedding bands and tasting cakes and planning our honeymoon. And you didn't think to mention this? My voice was rising now, and I made a conscious effort to lower it. Your ex-girlfriend moves back to town and it just slips your mind? It wasn't like that, he insisted. We reconnected professionally. Her design company is looking for architects for their new showroom. It's strictly business. Business, I echoed. Is that why she's sending me jewelry the day before our wedding? The earrings aren't from Vanessa, Garrett said firmly. They must be from someone else. Then who? I demanded. And why didn't they include a note? I don't know, Elle. Maybe they got separated from the card. Wedding gifts have been arriving all week. His explanation was plausible, but something still felt off, the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. The defensive set of his shoulders, the fact that he'd been in contact with Vanessa for months without telling me. Show me your phone, I said suddenly. What? Your phone. I want to see your conversations with Vanessa. Garrett looked genuinely shocked. Ellie, come on. That's not… If it's strictly business, you shouldn't have anything to hide, I challenged, holding out my hand. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then, with obvious reluctance, he pulled his phone from his pocket, unlocked it, and handed it to me. I opened his text messages and found Vanessa's name near the top. They'd exchanged messages that morning. I scrolled through their recent conversation, my heart sinking with each swipe. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow? Save me a dance? Vanessa sent yesterday. Definitely. Still can't believe you're coming. It means a lot. Garrett sent yesterday. I wouldn't miss it. And I hope Ellie likes the gift. Her taste is exquisite. Just like you said. Vanessa sent this morning. About that. Maybe hold off on giving it to her at the wedding. I'll explain tomorrow. Garrett sent this morning. I looked up from the phone, my vision blurring with unshed tears. The earrings are from her. You knew about them. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Elle, please, it's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been secretly communicating with your ex for months. It looks like you invited her to our wedding without telling me. It looks like she sent me a gift I can't even wear, and you knew about it. My voice broke on the last word. I was going to tell you, he said, desperation creeping into his tone. After the wedding, I didn't want to upset you before I was legally bound to you, I finished. How considerate. A knock at the door interrupted us. Laurel's voice called through, Ellie? Your parents are looking for you. The caterer wants to start serving. Just a minute, I called back, struggling to keep my voice steady. I handed Garrett his phone, my mind racing. 50 guests were waiting for us in the dining room. Our families had spent thousands on this rehearsal dinner, not to mention the wedding tomorrow. Everything was in place. The flowers, the cake, the DJ, the photographer. The machine was in motion. But how could I go through with it now? How could I stand before our loved ones and promise forever to someone who had been hiding something so significant? Ellie, please, Garrett said, reaching for me again. Can we just get through tonight and talk about this later? Everyone's waiting. I looked at him. This man I thought I knew. This man I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt a strange calm descend over me. You're right, I said, straightening my shoulders. Everyone's waiting. We shouldn't keep them any longer. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. I promise we'll sort this out. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further, and moved toward the door. As I reached for the handle, I paused and turned back to him. Just tell me one thing, Garrett. Are you still in love with her? He hesitated, just for a heartbeat, but long enough. No, of course not. I love you, Ellie. You're the one I'm marrying tomorrow. I studied his face, searching for the truth behind his words. Then I opened the door and stepped back into the warmth and noise of the rehearsal dinner, my decision already forming. Tatar. Evening stretched before me like an elaborate play in which I had a starring role, smiling, toasting, accepting well wishes, all while my mind worked furiously, processing what I'd learned and what it meant. Beside me, Garrett performed his part flawlessly, the perfect, attentive fiancé. Only I could see the tension in his shoulders, the slightly too bright quality of his smile. During the main course, my father stood to deliver the first toast of the evening, raising his glass to the beautiful couple who found each other when they weren't even looking. Garrett squeezed my hand under the table as everyone applauded. I squeezed back automatically, even as I noted the irony. We had indeed found each other when we weren't looking. Garrett, it seemed, had continued looking even after he found me. As the dinner progressed through courses and toasts, a plan began to crystallize in my mind. Not a plan to confront Garrett again, or to call off the wedding dramatically, but something else entirely. Something that would allow me to reclaim the day on my own terms. By the time dessert was served, a miniature version of our wedding cake, a subtle lemon with raspberry filling, I knew what I had to do. I excused myself to the restroom, catching Laurel's eye as I stood. She nodded almost imperceptibly and followed a moment later. In the elegant powder room, I finally let the tears come, hot and silent. What happened? Laurel asked, locking the door behind her and wrapping me in a hug. The earrings are from Vanessa, I said. She's been back in town for 6 months. They've been in touch the whole time and he never told me. That bastard, Laurel muttered, pulling back to look at me. What are you going to do? Call it off? I wiped my eyes carefully, mindful of my makeup. No, not exactly. What does that mean? I met her gaze in the mirror, determination replacing despair. I'm still getting married tomorrow at 5 p.m., but I won't be the bride Garrett is expecting. Laurel's eyes widened. Explain. And so, as the dessert plates were being cleared in the dining room beyond, I outlined my plan, the most unconventional, possibly insane wedding plan ever conceived. But as I spoke, I could see the shock on Laurel's face giving way to a grudging admiration. "It's completely crazy," she said when I finished. "But also, kind of brilliant. Are you sure about this?" "More sure than I've been about anything in a long time," I said, reapplying my lipstick with steady hands. "Will you help me?" Laurel grinned, a spark of mischief lighting her eyes. "Just try and stop me. What do we do first?" "First," I said, checking my reflection one last time, "we get through the rest of this dinner. Then the real work begins." We rejoined the party, where Garrett shot me a questioning look. I smiled serenely back at him, raising my glass in a private toast. To new beginnings, I thought. Just not the kind he was expecting. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, I clung to my newfound clarity like a lifeline. Tomorrow would bring chaos and confrontation, heartbreak and possibly scandal. But tonight, I had a plan. A way to take back control of my story, from the man who had been secretly rewriting it behind my back. I kissed Garrett goodnight at the hotel elevator, maintaining the tradition of the bride and groom spending the night before the wedding apart. He seemed relieved that I was being so understanding, promising again that we would sort everything out after the wedding. "Absolutely," I agreed, my smile not quite reaching my eyes. "Everything will be exactly as it should be tomorrow." The elevator doors closed between us. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since finding those emerald earrings, I knew exactly what I was doing. It wasn't the happily ever after I'd planned, but it would be an ending, and a beginning I could live with. Back in my suite, surrounded by my bridesmaids who were preparing for our traditional night before sleepover, I took out my phone and composed a text to an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who owed me a favor, someone who might just be crazy enough to go along with my scheme. "Need your help with something unconventional. Wedding emergency. Can you meet for coffee at 7 a.m.? The response came almost immediately. "For you, anything. See you at 7. I smiled, a real smile this time, and set my phone aside. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight, I would sleep soundly, secure in the knowledge that while Garrett had invited his past to our wedding, I was about to introduce him to his future, just not in the way he expected. I barely slept that night. The rehearsal dinner had been an exercise in emotional compartmentalization, smiling, laughing, accepting congratulations from our families while internally my world was crumbling. I'd gone through the motions, clinking glasses with Garrett, thanking his parents for hosting the beautiful dinner, hugging my soon-to-be in-laws. Meanwhile, my mind had been racing, constructing and discarding plans for how to handle this betrayal. By 3 a.m, I was sitting cross-legged on the hotel room floor surrounded by my bridesmaids, who were all finally mercifully asleep. Madeline and Bree were curled up on the king-sized bed, while Laurel had claimed the sofa. The suite was quiet except for their soft breathing and the occasional distant rumble of a car passing by on the street below. I opened my laptop and stared at the blank document I'd created, titled simply, Options. The cursor blinked accusingly, as if demanding I make a decision. The velvet box with the emerald earrings sat beside me, a tangible reminder of the mess I was in. Option 1, confront Garrett again in the morning. Demand full transparency about his relationship with Vanessa. Decide whether to proceed with the wedding based on his response. Option 2, cancel the wedding. Call everyone, return the gifts, face the humiliation and financial loss. Option 3, go through with the wedding, pretending I knew nothing, and deal with the Vanessa situation afterward. None of these options felt right. Each one forced me to accept some form of defeat, either the end of my relationship or a marriage beginning on shaky ground. I picked up my phone and scrolled back to the mysterious text I'd sent before going to bed. The contact simply read, JT, Julia Torres. We'd been inseparable through high school and the first 2 years of college before life had taken us in different directions. Julia had been my emergency contact, my midnight confidant, my partner in more than a few ill-advised adventures. She'd dropped out of college to pursue a career in dance, eventually becoming a choreographer for music videos and commercials. The last time we'd spoken had been after my mother's surgery 2 years ago. Julia had sent flowers and called to check in, but our conversation had been brief, filled with promises to catch up properly soon, promises neither of us had kept. We'd drifted, the way people do. But there had been a time when I would have trusted Julia with my life. And now I was about to trust her with something almost as significant. Need your help with something unconventional. Wedding emergency? Can you meet for coffee at 7 a.m.? Her immediate response had both surprised and relieved me. For you? Anything. See you at 7. She hadn't even asked for details. That was Julia. Leap first, ask questions later. It was what I'd always loved about her, and what had sometimes terrified me. I closed my laptop and crawled over to my overnight bag, careful not to wake the others. Pulling out a notebook and pen, I began to sketch out a more detailed version of the plan that had been forming in my mind since the rehearsal dinner. It was outrageous, potentially disastrous, and would require perfect timing and cooperation from several people. But if it worked? The digital clock on the nightstand flipped to 4:23 a.m., less than 3 hours until I was due to meet Julia, less than 13 hours until I was scheduled to walk down the aisle. I needed to sleep, even if just for a little while. I curled up in the armchair by the window, wrapping myself in the hotel's plush robe. Outside, the city was still dark, a few lights twinkling in office buildings where cleaning crews or early risers were already at work. Somewhere out there, Garrett was sleeping in his best man's guest room. Was he dreaming of me or of Vanessa? Was he looking forward to our wedding or secretly dreading it? And Vanessa, where was she staying? Had she flown in just for the wedding, or had she been in town all along? Did she think the emerald earrings were a peace offering, or was she fully aware that I couldn't wear them without breaking out in hives? My mind spun with questions until, finally, exhaustion claimed me. I woke, to Laurel gently shaking my shoulder. Ellie, it's 6:30. Did you sleep here all night? I blinked, disoriented, my neck stiff from the awkward position. What? No, what time is it? 6:30, she repeated, concerned about etching her features. Why are you up? You're supposed to be resting before the big day. The big day. For a moment, I'd forgotten about the wedding, about Vanessa, about the emeralds. Then it all came rushing back. I'm meeting someone for coffee at 7, I said, standing and stretching the kinks from my back. I need to get ready. Laurel frowned. Meeting someone? Today? Ellie, we have hair and makeup starting at 10, and the photographer will be here at noon for getting ready shots. I know. I'll be back in plenty of time. I grabbed fresh clothes from my suitcase and headed for the bathroom. If Madeline and Bree wake up, tell them I went for a walk to clear my head. Wedding nerves or something. This is about what happened last night, isn't it? Laurel asked quietly, following me to the bathroom door. The ex-girlfriend and the earrings. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Yes, and I'm working on a solution. I'll fill you in when I get back. Ellie, what are you planning? You're still getting married today, right? I met her worried gaze. Someone is definitely getting married at 5 p.m. today, but I'm making some adjustments to the program. Before she could question me further, I slipped into the bathroom and turned on the shower, letting the steam and the rushing water drown out any additional inquiries. I had 30 minutes to make myself presentable and get to the coffee shop around the corner where I'd agreed to meet Julia. The shower helped clear my head, washing away the fog of a nearly sleepless night. As I dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, I caught a glimpse of my wedding dress hanging in its garment bag on the back of the bathroom door. The ivory lace, the delicate beading I'd fallen in love with. Would I ever wear it? Should I? I applied. Minimal makeup, threw my hair into a ponytail and grabbed my phone and room key. Laurel was waiting by the door, arms crossed. "I don't like this," she said. "Whatever you're planning, it feels reckless." "It is reckless," I admitted. "But so was inviting his ex to our wedding without telling me." She sighed, uncrossing her arms to give me a quick hug. "Just be careful, okay? And text me if you need backup." "Will do," I promised, slipping past her and heading for the elevator. The coffee shop was just opening when I arrived, the morning barista arranging pastries in the display case. Julia was already there, securing a table in the corner, 2 steaming mugs in front of her. Her back was to me, but I would have recognized her anywhere. The perfect posture from years of dance training, the dark hair cut in a sharp bob that swung when she turned to scan the shop. Our eyes met, and her face broke into a wide smile. She stood, arms outstretched, and I fell into her embrace with a sense of homecoming I hadn't expected. "Ellie Bennett," she said, holding me at arm's length to examine me. "Still gorgeous, even at ungodly hours of the morning." I laughed, the sound a bit wobbly. "And Julia Torres, still showing up for me even when I've been a terrible friend." "Stop." "That," she said firmly, guiding me to sit across from her. "Life happens. We're here now." She pushed one of the mugs toward me. I remembered. Vanilla latte, extra shot, no foam. The fact that she remembered my coffee order after all this time nearly brought me to tears. "Thank you," I managed, wrapping my cold hands around the warm ceramic. Julia studied me, her dark eyes missing nothing. "So, wedding emergency, considering you're supposed to be getting married in..." She checked her watch. 10 hours, and... "You're here with me instead of getting beautified. I'm guessing it's serious." I took a deep breath and dove in, telling her everything. The emerald earrings, the email from Marin, the confrontation with Garrett, his admission that he'd been in contact with Vanessa for months, the text messages, the rehearsal dinner where I'd had to pretend everything was fine. Julia listened without interrupting, her expression growing progressively more outraged. "That absolute piece of garbage," she exclaimed when I finished, earning glances from the other early morning customers. She lowered her voice. "So what are you going to do? Call it off?" "Not exactly," I said, pulling out the notes I'd made in the pre-dawn hours. "I have a different idea, but I'll need your help. And it's unconventional." Her eyes lit up with interest. "Unconventional is my specialty. Tell me more." I leaned forward, my voice dropping to just above a whisper. "How would you feel about being a bride today?" Julia blinked, clearly not expecting this. What? You want me to marry Garrett? Ellie, I don't even know him, and from what you've told me, I don't want to." No, I clarified quickly. "I don't want you to actually marry him. I want you to pretend to be me, up to a point. I want to give Garrett exactly what he deserves. A very public reminder of what happens when you invite your ex to your wedding behind your fiancé's back." Julia leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I'm listening." For the next half hour, I outlined my plan while Julia asked questions, offered suggestions, and occasionally broke into delighted laughter. By the time we'd finished our coffee, the basic framework was in place. "This is insane," Julia said, shaking her head with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "You know that, right?" "Completely," I agreed. "But so is inviting your ex to your wedding, without telling your fiancé." "Fair point." She tapped a finger against her lips, thinking, "The timing will be tight. We'll need to coordinate with Laurel and your other bridesmaids, and I'll need to familiarize myself with the venue, the schedule, and the key players. I have photos, diagrams, Everything on my phone, I said, already pulling up the wedding day timeline. And Laurel will help. The others, well, we'll have to bring them in carefully. Madeline will be on board, but Bree is Garrett's sister, so she's a potential complication. Julia nodded, understanding immediately. We can work around her, keep her in the dark until the last possible moment. I hesitated, suddenly overwhelmed by what we were planning. Julia, are you sure you want to do this? It's a lot to ask. You have your own life, your work. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Ellie, do you remember senior year of high school when Brad Thompson spread those rumors about me after I turned him down for prom? I nodded, the memory still able to spark anger after all these years. Brad had been the quarterback, popular, and entitled. When Julia had rejected him, he'd retaliated with vicious lies about her. You organized that entire dance flash mob during the pep rally, choreographed to Rumor Has It, with signs calling him out in front of the whole school. Julia's eyes were bright with the memory. You risked detention, social suicide, everything to stand up for me. This, she waved a hand at my notes. This is nothing compared to that. Her words warmed something in me that had been cold since finding those emerald earrings. We got 2 weeks of detention, I reminded her with a small smile. And it was worth every minute, she countered. So yes, I'm sure I want to do this. Let's give Garrett and his ex a wedding they'll never forget. My phone buzzed with a text from Laurel. Where are you? Madeline and Bree are up. They're asking questions. Garrett's mom called about breakfast. We need to go, I said, showing Julia the message. The wedding machine is in motion. Julia stood, gathering her things with efficient movements. I'll go to my place and get what I need, then meet you at the hotel in an hour. Text me the room number. Wait, I said as we headed for the door. There's one more thing. Something I haven't told you yet. She paused, turning to face me. What is it? The plan isn't just about humiliating Garrett, I admitted. There's someone else involved. Someone I need to see. Julia's eyebrows rose. Well, plot twist. Do tell. His name is Noah, I said, feeling a flush creep up my neck. We dated before Garrett, pretty seriously. He's a wildlife photographer, travels constantly for work. We broke up because our careers were taking us in different directions, but it was amicable. More than amicable, actually. Ah, Julia's expression turned knowing. The one that got away? Something like that, I acknowledged. We've kept in touch, sporadically. Holiday texts, birthday wishes. He's in town right now, between assignments. And you want to see him? Why? For closure? For revenge? For a dramatic reunion? I shook my head, uncertain how to articulate what I was feeling. I don't know, exactly. I just know I need to talk to him before I make any final decisions about today. About Garrett. Julia studied me for a moment, then nodded decisively. Okay, so we add a side quest to the mission. You talk to Noah while I prepare for my bridal debut. Just make sure you're back at the hotel by... She glanced at my wedding timeline on my phone. 9:30 at the latest. We'll need time to coordinate. With Laurel and get everything ready. I will be, I promised, feeling a strange mixture of dread and exhilaration at what lay ahead. Thank you, Julia, for everything. She pulled me into another hug. Just remember, no matter what happens today, you deserve someone who treats you like a priority, not an option. Whether that's Garrett after he learns his lesson, or Noah, or someone else entirely. Her words resonated as we parted ways outside the coffee shop, Julia heading toward the subway while I pulled out my phone to contact Noah. The message I crafted was simple. I know this is unexpected, but I need to see you. It's important. Are you free this morning? I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then began walking back toward the hotel, my mind racing with all that needed to be done before 5 p.m. I was halfway there when my phone buzzed with Noah's. Reply, "For you, I'll make myself free. Coffee shop in Bedford? 8:30? I texted back a quick affirmative, then called Laurel. "Where are you?" she demanded as soon as she answered. "Madeline's about to send out a search party." "I'm on my way back," I assured her. "I need you to keep everyone calm and contained until I get there." And Laurel, "You were right. I am planning something big. I'll explain everything when I get back, but I need to know if you're with me, no matter how crazy it sounds." There was a pause, then Laurel's voice, steady and sure. "I'm with you, Ellie. Always." "Good," I said, relief washing through me. "Because today isn't going to go anything like we planned." I ended the call and picked up my pace, my determination growing with each step. The confusion and panic of the night before had given way to a strange clarity. Yes, what I was planning was extreme, possibly even cruel. But as the saying goes, hell hath no fury like a woman who discovers her fiancé has been secretly communicating with his ex for months and then invites her to their wedding without a word. Garrett had rewritten our love story without my consent. Now it was my turn to change the ending. When I reached the hotel, I found my bridesmaids in various states of concern. Madeline was pacing, still in her pajamas, while Bree was on the phone, presumably with her brother. Laurel sat calmly on the sofa, an island of composure in the storm of anxiety. "There you are," Madeline exclaimed when I walked in. "Where on earth have you been? It's your wedding day." "I needed some air," I said, shrugging off my jacket. "And some coffee. And some perspective." Bree ended her call, eyeing me suspiciously. "Garrett says you were upset last night. Something about a misunderstanding?" Of course he'd framed it that way. A misunderstanding, as if I'd simply failed to grasp the innocent nature of his secret 6-month correspondence with his ex-girlfriend. "You could call it that," I said, striving for a neutral tone. "Is everything still on schedule for today?" "Yes," Bree said, still watching me carefully. "Hair and makeup will be here at 10. Mom wants to know if we're still having breakfast downstairs. At 9. I checked the time, 8:15. I needed to meet Noah in 15 minutes, and I still needed to coordinate with Julia and Laurel. "I'm not feeling up to a big breakfast," I said, feigning a slight headache. "Why don't you and Madeline go down? Laurel and I will join you later." Madeline looked between Laurel and me, clearly sensing something was amiss. "What's going on, Ellie? You're acting strange." I sighed, knowing I'd have to bring Madeline into the plan sooner or later. She was my sister, after all, and despite her sometimes flighty nature, her loyalty was unquestionable. "I'll explain everything, I promise. But I need a little more time to figure things out. Please, Maddie. Trust me?" My sister's expression softened. "Of course I trust you, but whatever's going on, I want to help." "You will," I assured her. "Later. Right now, I need you to go to breakfast with Bree and keep things normal." After a bit more convincing, Madeline and Bree finally departed for breakfast, leaving Laurel and me alone in the suite. "Okay, Spill," Laurel said the moment the door closed behind them. "What's this big plan, and who were you meeting this morning?" Quickly filled her in on my meeting with Julia and the outline of our scheme. Laurel's eyes grew wider with each detail. Wow," she said when I finished. "But what about the second meeting? The one you're about to rush off to?" I glanced at the clock, 8:25. "That's Noah." "Noah? You're Noah? The wildlife photographer you were crazy about before Garrett?" "He's not my Noah," I corrected, though the possessive pronoun sent an unexpected flutter through my chest. "But yes, that Noah. He's in town, and I need to see him before I go through with any of this." Laurel stood, smoothing her hands over her pajama pants. "Okay, so what do you need me to do?" "Julia will be here in about 30 minutes. Get her up to speed on any details I might have missed, help her familiarize herself with the venue layout and key people, and start thinking about how and when to bring Madeline in on the plan without Bree finding out. Consider it done, Laurel said with a decisive nod. And Ellie? For what it's worth, I think Garrett deserves every bit of what's coming to him. I gave her a quick hug. Thank you. I'll be back as soon as I can. With one last check of my appearance in the mirror, not great, but presentable enough for an unexpected reunion with an ex, I headed out again, this time to meet Noah. As I stepped into the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. Morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you walking down the aisle today. I love you. The message, so normal, so seemingly sincere, made my stomach clench. Part of me wanted to believe that he meant it, that last night's revelations had been some cosmic misunderstanding, but then I remembered those text messages to Vanessa, the secrecy, the emerald earrings that now seemed like a deliberate reminder of what I couldn't have. I didn't reply to Garrett's text. Instead, I pocketed my phone and stepped out of the elevator, with renewed purpose. In less than 9 hours, I was supposed to become Mrs. Garrett Fairchild. But first, I needed to remember who Ellie Bennett was, the woman who existed before Garrett, the woman who might exist after him, and there was no one who knew that woman better than the man I was about to meet. The coffee shop on Bedford Street was a small, eclectic place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Noah and I had discovered it during the early days of our relationship, back when we were both struggling creatives with more ambition than money. We'd spend hours there, sharing a single muffin, nursing coffees that went cold as we talked about our dreams. Now, as I pushed open the door, the familiar scent of freshly ground beans and warm pastries brought back a flood of memories. Noah was already there, seated at a corner table by the window, our table. He looked up as the bell above the door jingled, and his face broke into that slow, easy smile that had once made my heart race. It still did, I realized with a jolt. Even after all this time. He stood as I approached, and there was a moment of awkward hesitation. Should we hug? Shake hands? But then he opened his arms, and I stepped into his embrace without thinking. Ellie Bennett, he said close to my ear, his voice warm with affection. It's been too long. I pulled back, taking him in. Noah Hayes looked good. Better than good. His light brown hair was a bit longer than when I'd last seen him, with streaks of gold from the sun. His skin was tanned, with new laugh lines around his eyes, evidence of adventures I hadn't been part of. Noah, I managed suddenly, overwhelmed by the strangeness of being here, with him, on what was supposed to be my wedding day. Thank you for meeting me. Of course. He gestured for me to sit, then signaled to the barista. Still a vanilla latte girl? I nodded, touched that he remembered. Some things don't change. And some things do, he said quietly, his eyes dropping to the engagement ring on my left hand. I got your wedding invitation a few months ago. I was surprised. Surprised I was getting married, or surprised I invited you? I asked. Both, maybe. He shrugged. I sent my regrets, though. I figured it might be complicated if I showed up. The barista delivered my latte and a refill for Noah's black coffee. When she left, he leaned forward, his expression turning serious. But now, it's 8:30 a.m. on your wedding day, and you're here with me instead of getting ready. Want to tell me what's going on, Elle? The childhood nickname, one only Noah and my father ever used, broke something open inside me. Before I could stop myself, I was telling him everything. The emerald earrings, Vanessa's name on the guest list, the secret messages, the entire tangled mess. Noah listened without interrupting, his expression darkening as the story unfolded. When I finished, he sat back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. Jesus, Elle, I'm sorry. That's What a mess. Yeah, I agreed, wrapping my hands around my mug for warmth. A mess I'm supposed to legally bind myself to in less than 9 hours. Are you? He asked, his gaze direct. Going through with it? I mean? I hesitated, then told him about my plan with Julia, the bride swap, the public humiliation, the dramatic confrontation I'd envisioned. As I spoke, laying out the elaborate scheme, it sounded increasingly absurd, even to my own ears. Noah's reaction surprised me. Instead of the shock or judgment I'd expected, he started to laugh. A low, genuine laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. What? I demanded, feeling defensive. It's not that crazy. It's completely crazy, he corrected, still chuckling. And also very you. The Ellie Bennett special. Go big or go home. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. Is that a bad thing? Not at all, he said, his laughter subsiding. It's one of the things I always loved about you. You never do anything halfway. The casual mention of love, spoken in past tense, but still hanging in the air between us, created a moment of charged silence. Noah cleared his throat, breaking it. So Julia Torres is going to impersonate you at your own wedding? How is that going to work exactly? Won't people notice she's not, well, you? That's part of the plan, I explained. She'll be veiled until the last moment. The big reveal happens right before the vows. Noah shook his head, admiration and disbelief mingling in his expression. It's dramatic, I'll give you that. But Elle, are you sure this is what you want? There's no coming back from something like this. His question landed with unexpected weight. Was this what I wanted? Or was I reacting out of hurt and anger, crafting an elaborate revenge fantasy instead of facing the harder, more adult decision of simply ending my relationship? I don't know, I finally admitted. I just know I can't marry Garrett, not after this. But I also can't let him think this is okay. Inviting his ex behind my back, lying for months. He needs to understand what he's throwing away. Noah nodded slowly. Fair enough. But what happens after the big reveal? Have you thought about that part? Where will you go? What will you say to everyone? Your parents, his family? All those guests? I hadn't. Not really. In my hastily constructed plan, everything culminated with Julia lifting the veil in Garrett's face when he realized what was happening. The aftermath was a blur. I guess I didn't think that far ahead, I confessed, feeling suddenly foolish. That's also very you, Noah said, but his tone was gentle, without judgment. All action, consequences later. There was truth in his words. It was a pattern I'd fallen into more than once. Jumping first, dealing with the fallout after. Sometimes it worked out. Sometimes it left me scrambling to fix the mess I'd created. So what would you do? I asked, genuinely curious. If you were me? Noah considered for a moment. Honestly, I'd still call off the wedding. Someone who'd hide something this significant, who'd invite an ex to your wedding without discussing it. That's not someone who respects you. And marriage without respect is doomed from the start, I finished. Right. He met my eyes. But I might handle it differently. Less public drama, more direct confrontation. Tell him what you know, why it's a deal breaker, and walk away with your dignity intact. And let Vanessa win? The words were out before I could stop them, revealing a pettiness I wasn't proud of. Noah's expression softened. Is that what this is about? Beating Vanessa? I flushed, embarrassed. No, maybe. I don't know. It's just, they have this whole history I wasn't part of. And now she's back, and he clearly still has feelings for her, and I'm supposed to just gracefully exit stage left? You don't strike me as the graceful exit type, Noah said with a small smile. Never have been. But Elle, this isn't about winning or losing. It's about recognizing when something isn't right and having the courage to walk away. Even if walking away means admitting failure, Facing everyone who came to celebrate? Returning all those gifts? Even then. His voice was steady. Look, I'm not saying your plan isn't justified. If anyone deserves a public comeuppance, it's a guy who invites his ex to his wedding behind his fiancé's back. I'm just asking if it's what's best for you, not just what's worst for him. His words resonated, cutting through the fog of hurt and revenge that had clouded my thinking since finding those emerald earrings. I'd been so focused on making Garrett pay that I hadn't fully considered what I needed to heal and move forward. When did you get so wise? I asked, attempting a lightness I didn't quite feel. Spending a lot of time alone in the wilderness gives you plenty of opportunity to think, he replied. That, and I made enough relationship mistakes of my own to learn a few things the hard way. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, do tell. Another time, he said with a wry smile. Today is about you, not my romantic failures. My phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. A call, not a text. I pulled it out to see Laurel's name on the screen. I should take this, I said, standing. It's probably a wedding crisis number 5000. Noah nodded, and I stepped outside to answer, the cool morning air a shock after the warmth of the coffee shop. Laurel? What's wrong? Where are you? She demanded, her voice tight with tension. Julia's here, and we have a situation. What kind of situation? I asked, my stomach knotting. Garrett's mother showed up. She's in the lobby, insisting on bringing up a special gift for you. I've been stalling, but she's persistent. I closed my eyes, imagining Margaret Fairchild, with her perfect posture and judgmental gaze, demanding access to the bridal suite. Keep her downstairs. Tell her I'm in the shower, or meeting with the coordinator, anything. I'll be back in 20 minutes, tops. 20 minutes, Laurel repeated firmly. And Ellie? Julia thinks we should adjust the plan. She has some ideas. Good ones. I'll be right there, I promised, ending the call and heading back inside. Noah had paid the bill and was waiting by our table, my jacket in his hands. Wedding emergency? Garrett's mother, I said, slipping my arms into the jacket he held open. For me. She's at the hotel with a special gift. Let me guess. She's about 5'6", perfectly coiffed silver blonde hair. Looks like she's perpetually smelling something unpleasant. I laughed, surprised. That's eerily accurate. How did you know? I've met the type, he said, holding the door for me as we left the coffee shop. Usually clutching a designer handbag and saying things like, I'm not judging, but that's Margaret Fairchild to a T, I admitted as we walked toward the subway entrance. She's never approved of me. Not elite enough. Not from the right family. She once asked me, in all seriousness, which finishing school I'd attended. Charming, Noah said dryly. I bet she loves Vanessa, though. I stopped short, a realization hitting me. Oh my God, she does. She used to mention Vanessa all the time when Garrett and I first started dating. How accomplished she was, how well she fit in with their social circle. I bet she knows about the messages, about Vanessa coming. To the wedding, she might even be part of it? Noah looked troubled. All the more reason to think carefully about your next move. If his mother is involved, then this is bigger than just Garrett being hung up on his ex, I finished. It's about his whole family never accepting me. We'd reached the subway entrance. Noah hesitated, then asked, Do you want me to come with you? For moral support, or as a getaway driver if things go south? The offer was tempting, more than tempting. Having Noah's steady presence beside me as I navigated this mess would be a comfort. But I also knew it would complicate an already complex situation. I appreciate that, I said, genuinely touched. But I think I need to handle this part alone. If you were there, it would send a certain message, he finished, understanding immediately. Got it. But the offer stands if you change your mind. Thank you. I fidgeted with my engagement ring, spinning it around my finger. for listening, for advice, for being you. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear in a gesture so familiar it made my heart skip. Anytime, Elle. I mean that. We stood there for a moment, the bustle of the city continuing around us, while something unspoken passed between us. Then Noah stepped back, breaking the spell. "Go deal with your almost mother-in-law and your bride impersonator," he said with a small smile. "And remember, whatever you decide to do, make sure it's what's best for Ellie Bennett, not what's worst for Garrett Fairchild." I nodded, then impulsively pulled him into one more hug. "I'll let you know how it turns out." "Please do," he murmured against my hair. "And Elle? For what it's worth, I think he's an idiot for risking losing you." With those words hanging in the air between us, Noah turned and walked away, his tall figure soon disappearing into the morning crowd. I watched him go, a complicated tangle of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Then I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and headed underground to catch the train back to the hotel. By the time I reached the hotel lobby, I'd made a decision. Not a complete plan, not yet, but a starting point. A clarity I hadn't had when I left the coffee shop that morning. The first person I saw was Margaret Fairchild, perched on an elegant lobby chair, a wrapped box on her lap. She hadn't spotted me yet, her attention on her phone, probably texting Garrett or coordinating with the country club where the reception would be held. I ducked behind a large potted plant, pulling out my own phone to text Laurel. Margaret still, in lobby. "Coming up back elevator. Meet me there." A moment later, Laurel responded, "On my way. Julia has news." I slipped past the reception desk, nodding to the concierge who recognized me from check-in, and made my way to the service elevator. Bank's around the corner. Laurel was already there, holding the door open, her expression tense. "What happened?" I asked as soon as the elevator doors closed, sealing us in privacy. "Garrett called while you were gone," she said, pressing the button for our floor. "He was asking about you, if you were feeling better, if you needed anything. Said his mother was bringing you a family heirloom to wear today." My stomach clenched. "A family heirloom? What is it?" "No idea, but Julia thinks it might be jewelry." She intercepted the call, pretended to be you. "She what?" I gasped. "How did that go?" Laurel grimaced. "Mixed results. She does a decent impression of your voice, but Garrett definitely knew something was off. He kept asking if you were okay, if you needed him to come up." "What did she say?" "That you were fine, just nervous, and that tradition says he can't see you before the ceremony. He seemed to buy it, but he's suspicious," I finished. "Great. That complicates things." The elevator arrived at our floor, and Laurel led me down the hall, checking around corners before ushering me into the suite. Inside, I found Julia and Madeline deep in conversation, heads bent over what looked like the wedding program. "Ellie," Madeline exclaimed, rushing to hug me. "Julia explained everything. That absolute weasel. I can't believe Garrett would do this to you." I returned her hug, relieved that my sister was up to speed and on board. "I know. It's a lot to process." Julia stood, elegant even in casual clothes, her dancer's posture perfect. "How was your meeting with the ex-boyfriend?" she asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Illuminating," I said, setting down my purse. "Noah thinks the whole bride swap plan is very me, but he also suggested a less dramatic approach might be healthier." Julia rolled her eyes. "Less dramatic is boring. Also, not nearly satisfying enough given what Garrett did." "Maybe," I acknowledged. "But he had a point about the aftermath. I hadn't really thought about what happens after the big reveal. Where I go, what I say to everyone." "That's where my new ideas come in," Julia said, gesturing for me to join her and Madeline. "I've been thinking about this all wrong. The bride swap shouldn't be the climax. It should be the opening act." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite myself. "Go on." Instead of the big reveal happening during the ceremony, we do it beforehand, privately, with just Garrett. Let him know that you know everything, that the wedding is off, but that the reception is still happening." "The reception?" I asked, confused. "Without a wedding?" Julia grinned, a mischievous light in her eyes. "Oh, there will still be a gathering. Just not the one he's expecting. More of a public announcement, a chance for you to control the narrative, to tell your side before he can spin his, and to make sure everyone knows exactly why the wedding was called off," Madeline added, clearly on board with this new direction. "Including Vanessa," Laurel chimed in, "who, according to the seating chart, will be at table 7, front and center for the whole show." I sat down on the edge of the bed, considering this new approach. It still had the dramatic flair of the original plan, the public accountability I wanted Garrett to face, but with a different framework, one that put me in control rather than casting me as the fleeing bride. "So what exactly are you proposing?" I asked Julia. She sat beside me, excitement radiating from her. "You confront Garrett privately, show him the evidence of his deception, and end the engagement. Then, instead of disappearing, you appear at the reception as planned, but not as a new bride, as a woman who respected herself enough to walk away from a man who didn't deserve her." "You give a speech," Madeline continued, warming to the idea. "Brief, dignified, but clear about why the wedding didn't happen. No ceremony, no legal entanglements, but all the public acknowledgement that what he did was wrong," Laurel summarized. I turned the idea over in my mind. It was still dramatic, still public, but somehow it felt cleaner, more honest, less about revenge and more about standing in my truth. "What about his family?" I asked, thinking of Margaret downstairs with her mysterious box. "His mother would never allow it." "That's the beauty of it," Julia said, her eyes gleaming. "By the time they realize what's happening, it will already be underway. And what can they do? Stop you from speaking? Create a scene? Either way, they lose." The plan was taking shape in my mind, crystallizing into something that felt right. Not perfect, not easy, but right. "There's still one piece missing," I said slowly. "How do I confront Garrett? When? Where?" "I have a thought about that too," Julia admitted. "But you might not like it. Try me. We let his mother bring up her family heirloom. We see what it is, what it means. Then you request a private moment with Garrett. The bride needs to discuss something with the groom. Very urgent, very traditional. We arrange for you to meet, somewhere private but on your terms. And then I lay it all out," I said, seeing the shape of it. "The messages, the emeralds, Vanessa, all of it." "Exactly. But we'll need to keep Margaret from suspecting anything's wrong when she brings the gift," Laurel pointed out. "She's already downstairs, probably wondering why you're avoiding her." I glanced at the clock, 9:15 a.m. Hair and makeup would arrive soon, the photographer at noon. The florist was delivering bouquets at 2. The ceremony was scheduled for 5. The machinery of the wedding day was already in motion. "Okay," I said, making a decision. "Here's what we do. Laurel, call down to Margaret. Tell her I'm ready to see her. Let's find out what this family heirloom is. Julia, you and Madeline start working on the specifics of the reception plan. What I'll say, how we'll handle the logistics. And someone text Bree. Find out where she is." "She's with her parents," Madeline supplied. "Breakfast, then some kind of family prayer thing at 10. She'll be back after that." "Perfect," I said, feeling a surge of energy replace the confusion and hurt that had dominated the past 12 hours. "That gives us time to prepare, and I need to make one more call." "To who?" Laurel asked. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a number I'd almost called many times over the past few months, but always stopped myself. "To Noah. I think I might need that getaway driver after all." As I pressed the call button, I caught Julia, watching me with a knowing smile. "What?" I asked, covering the phone as it began to ring. "Nothing," she said, her smile widening. "Just thinking that sometimes the universe has interesting ways of course-correcting when we've taken a wrong turn." Before I could respond, Noah's voice came through the line. "That was fast. Wedding crisis averted already?" "Not exactly," I said, stepping toward the window for some privacy. "How do you feel about being part of a slightly less chaotic but still quite dramatic wedding day plan?" "I'm intrigued," he replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Tell me more." As I outlined our new direction, I felt something settle in my chest, a certainty that, regardless of how this day unfolded, I was finally making decisions based on what I needed, not what would hurt Garrett most. And that was progress I could be proud of. Behind me, the suite door opened, and Laurel's voice carried across the room. "Margaret, how lovely to see you. Ellie's just finishing up a call, but she'll be right with you. Please come in." I turned to see Margaret Fairchild enter, elegant in a pale blue dress, a wrapped box clutched in her manicured hands. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of me in jeans and a sweater, hair untamed, clearly not in bridal preparation mode. "Eleanor," she said, her voice perfectly modulated to convey both greeting and disapproval. "I've bought something special for you to wear today, a Fairchild tradition." "I need to go," I murmured into the phone. "Operation Mother-in-Law is commencing." "Good luck," Noah replied. "Remember, whatever happens, I'm in your corner." I ended the call and slipped the phone into my pocket, then squared my shoulders and moved toward Margaret, a smile fixed firmly on my face. "Margaret, how thoughtful. Please, show me what you've brought." As she began unwrapping the box with meticulous care, I caught Laurel's eye over her shoulder. My friend gave me a subtle thumbs up, her expression conveying what words couldn't. "You've got this." And for the first time since finding those emerald earrings, I believed it might be true. Margaret Fairchild's perfectly manicured nails lifted, the lid of the box with ceremonial slowness. The suite had fallen silent, all of us, Laurel, Madeline, Julia, and me, watching as she revealed what lay inside. "The Fairchild sapphires," Margaret announced, her voice reverent. "Worn by every Fairchild bride for 5 generations. Nestled on black velvet was a stunning sapphire and diamond necklace. The central stone a deep midnight blue the size of a small robin's egg. It was undeniably beautiful, a piece that would make any bride feel like royalty." "It's exquisite," I said honestly, reaching out to touch the cool stones. "Garrett's great-great-grandmother wore it when she married into the family in 1893, Margaret continued, satisfaction evident in her tone. "Each bride since has worn it as a symbol of joining our lineage." The symbolism wasn't subtle. This wasn't just jewelry. It was a brand, a declaration of ownership. I would be marked as Fairchild property, joining the ranks of proper society, wives who had come before me. "May I?" I asked, lifting the necklace from its bed of velvet. Margaret nodded, pleased by my apparent appreciation. "Of course. It will complement your dress beautifully." The necklace was heavy in my hands, the sapphire catching the light as I turned it. 5 generations of Fairchild brides. Had any of them known what they were really agreeing to when they married into this family? Had they all sublimated their own desires, their own identities, to become what the Fairchilds expected? "Thank you, Margaret," I said, carefully returning the necklace to its box. "It's a wonderful tradition." "Garrett will be so pleased to see you wearing it," she said, snapping the lid closed with an air of finality. "He was concerned you might be having second thoughts." Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew she was aware of more than she was letting on. The careful evaluation in her gaze, the slight tightening around her mouth. She was gauging my reaction, testing the waters. "Second thoughts?" I asked, keeping my tone light. What would give him that idea? Margaret smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her skirt. Oh, you know how grooms can be. Last-minute nerves. He mentioned you'd seemed upset last night. Wedding? Jitters, I said with a dismissive wave. Nothing to worry about. She didn't believe me. That much was clear. But she was too well-bred to push further, at least not directly. Well, I'm glad to hear it. She stood, smoothing her already perfect hair. The hair and makeup team should be arriving soon, yes? I've taken the liberty of having the hotel prepare a light brunch for you girls. Garrett always says you forget to eat when you're busy. The presumption behind her words, that she knew what was best for me, that I needed managing, would have irritated me on any normal day. Today, it was almost comical. If only she knew what I was really planning. How thoughtful, I said, matching. Her saccharine tone. But before you go, Margaret, I was hoping to speak with Garrett briefly. There's a wedding detail we overlooked. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose a fraction. On the wedding day? But tradition. It's important, I interrupted, maintaining my smile. Just a 5-minute conversation. Surely tradition can bend that much. Margaret hesitated, clearly torn between wedding superstition and the desire to keep things running smoothly. What sort of detail? It's personal, I said firmly, between the bride and groom. Julia stepped forward, her timing impeccable. It's about the vows, she supplied smoothly. Ellie's made a last-minute change she wants to run by Garrett. I see, Margaret said, though her expression suggested she didn't. Not really. Well, I suppose we could arrange something. A conversation where you don't actually see each other? Perhaps with a door between you? Perfect, I agreed quickly. The hotel has those connecting rooms. Maybe Garrett could come up in, say, 30 minutes? He could stay in the adjacent room and we could talk through the door. Margaret checked her watch. I'm meeting the florist at 10:30 to oversee the final arrangements, but I could send Garrett up before that. That would be wonderful, I said, resisting the urge to look at my friends, to share in their knowledge of what was really happening. Thank you, Margaret. She nodded, apparently satisfied that wedding tradition wouldn't be completely trampled. I'll leave the necklace with you then. The clasp can be tricky. Have one of the girls help you with it later. With that, she swept out of the suite, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and unspoken expectations. The moment the door closed behind her, Julia let out a low whistle. Well, that was illuminating. The Fairchild sapphires, huh? Nothing. Like a family heirloom to really drive home the whole "you belong to us now" vibe. Did you see how she was watching you? Laurel asked, moving to the window to make sure Margaret had actually left. She definitely suspects something's up. Let her suspect, I said, my resolve strengthening. In 30 minutes it won't matter. Garrett will know exactly where I stand. Madeline picked up the jewelry box, opening it to examine the necklace again. It is gorgeous, though. The sapphire alone must be worth a fortune. Probably why she's never quite approved of me, I said wryly. Not quite trustworthy enough to be given charge of the family jewels. Speaking of jewelry, Julia said, retrieving her bag from the sofa. What are we doing about these? She held up the velvet box containing the emerald earrings. I took the box from her, opening it to look at the glittering green stones one more time. They were beautiful, undeniably so. But they represented something ugly. Deception, disregard. Disrespect, we're returning them, I said decisively. To their rightful owner. Vanessa, Laurel supplied, understanding immediately. Exactly. Table 7, right? I think they'd make a lovely centerpiece for her place setting, don't you? Julia grinned, a spark of mischief lighting her eyes. I knew there was a reason we were friends. That's deliciously petty. I prefer to think of it as resourceful, I countered, closing the emerald box and setting it aside. Now, we have less than 30 minutes before Garrett arrives. Let's make sure we're ready. The next 20 minutes were a flurry of activity. Julia and I worked on what I would say to Garrett. Clear, direct, non-negotiable. Laurel coordinated, with the hotel to ensure we'd have access to the connecting room, spinning a story about the bride needing to store some pre-ceremony items separately. Madeline called our parents, informing them cryptically that there might be a change of plans and asking them to be prepared for a private conversation before the ceremony. As the clock ticked toward our arranged meeting time, my nerves began to fray. This wasn't just about confronting Garrett anymore. It was about standing up for myself in a way I never had before. Not with him, not with his family, maybe not ever in my life. What if he denies everything? I asked Julia as she helped me, into a simple white dress, not my wedding gown, but formal enough to convey that this was serious. What if he manages to explain it all away? He won't, she said confidently, zipping up the back. You have the evidence, the earrings, the texts, the email from Marin, and more importantly, you know your own worth now. You won't let him gaslight you. And if he does try, Laurel added from across the room, we'll be right here. Backup chorus, ready to shut him down. A knock at the door made us all freeze. Madeline checked the peephole, then turned to us with wide eyes. It's him! Garrett's here! My heart began to race, adrenaline flooding my system. This was it. The moment that would determine the course of the rest of the day, maybe the rest of my life. Ready? Julia asked, squeezing my shoulders supportively. I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady myself. As I'll ever be. Laurel opened the door to the adjacent room, revealing a small sitting area similar to our own suite. I'll send him in here, she said. Remember, you're in control. This is your moment. I positioned myself near the connecting door, the emerald earrings in one hand, my phone with the incriminating texts in the other. Julia, Madeline, and Laurel retreated to the far side of our suite, close enough to hear, but giving me the space to handle this confrontation on my own terms. Another knock, this time at the main door of the adjacent room. Laurel answered it, her voice carrying clearly through the thin wall. Garrett, thanks for coming. Ellie's just on the other side of this door. You can talk through it, but no peeking. Bad luck and all that. Is everything okay? Garrett's voice, concerned and slightly confused. Mom said Ellie needed to discuss something urgently. I'll let her explain, Laurel said diplomatically. I'll give you privacy. Footsteps, the sound of the outer door closing, and then silence. He was there, just on the other side of the door, the man I'd planned to spend my life with, the man who'd betrayed that plan without a second thought. Ellie? His voice came through the door, uncertain. What's going on? Are you okay? I closed, my eyes briefly centering myself, then spoke clearly. I'm not okay, Garrett, not even close to okay. But I will be. What does that mean? Is it wedding nerves? Because that's normal. It's not wedding nerves, I interrupted firmly. It's about Vanessa. Silence stretched for a long moment before he responded, his voice careful. Vanessa? What about her? Don't, I said, pressing my palm against the door as if I could physically stop his lies. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. I know everything, the texts, the meetings, the fact that you invited her to our wedding without telling me. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from confusion to defensive. I can explain that. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you've been secretly in contact with your ex-girlfriend for months. I think you invited her to our wedding without discussing it with me. I think she sent me emerald earrings. Emeralds, Garrett, which you know I'm allergic to. The earrings weren't my idea, he said quickly. I told her not to. He stopped, abruptly, realizing he'd just confirmed my accusations. Not to what? I pressed. Not to send them? Or not to have them delivered directly to me? Were you planning to pretend they were from someone else? Ellie, please. His voice took on an imploring quality. Can we talk about this face to face? This feels ridiculous speaking through a door. No, I said firmly. We're doing this on my terms. And my terms are that you explain right now why you thought it was acceptable to maintain a secret relationship with Vanessa and then invite her to our wedding. It wasn't a secret relationship, he protested. We reconnected professionally. Her design firm is expanding, looking for architects. It was business. Business, I repeated flatly. Is that why you told her to save you a dance at our wedding? Is that why she sent me jewelry I can't even wear? Don't lie to me, Garrett. I've seen the texts. Silence fell again, heavier this time. I could almost picture him on the other side of the door, running his hand through his hair the way he did when he felt cornered. Okay, he said finally, his voice quieter. I should have told you Vanessa was back in town. I should have told you we were in contact, but it wasn't an affair, Ellie. We were just talking. Just talking, I echoed. For 6 months, behind my back, while we were planning our wedding. It wasn't like that, he insisted. At first, it really was just professional. Then, I don't know, we started catching up. Old friends reconnecting. Old friends don't typically send jewelry to their friend's fiancé, I pointed out. Especially not jewelry that could cause an allergic reaction. That was a mistake, he admitted. When she mentioned wanting to send you something, I should have stopped her. I did try, but it was too late. She'd already sent them. And yet you never thought to warn me? Hey, Ellie, heads up. My ex sent you emerald earrings that might make your skin break out in hives. That didn't seem important to mention? I was going to tell you after the wedding, he said, an edge of frustration entering his voice. I didn't want to upset you before I was legally bound to you, I finished for him, anger flooding my system anew. How considerate. Ellie. Please, he said, and I heard him lean against the door, his voice closer now. I love you. I want to marry you. Vanessa is my past, not my future. Then why invite her to our wedding? I demanded. Why risk hurting me like this? His hesitation told me everything I needed to know. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. I thought it would be good closure to see her there, witnessing me marry someone else, to prove to myself that chapter was truly over. The admission stunned me with its selfishness. Our wedding, the day that was supposed to be, about our love, our commitment, our future, had been hijacked by his need for closure with another woman. So our wedding wasn't about us, I said slowly, the realization settling like ice in my stomach. It was about you proving something to yourself, about Vanessa. No, that's not. It is. I cut him off. That's exactly what you just said. You invited her to our wedding for your own closure, regardless of how it might make me feel. You didn't even consider me in that equation, did you? Ellie, did Margaret know? I asked suddenly. A new thought occurred to me. Did your mother know about Vanessa coming to the wedding? His silence was answer enough. Unbelievable, I breathed, leaning my forehead against the door. She knew. She probably encouraged it, didn't she? She's always preferred Vanessa. My mother has nothing to do with this, Garrett said, but his protest sounded weak even to my ears. Your mother has everything to do with this, I countered. She's been undermining our relationship from day one, and you've let her. Just like you let her dictate every aspect of this wedding. The venue, the guest list, even the food. And now she brings me the Fairchild sapphires, as if marking her territory. That's tradition, he protested. Every Fairchild bride. I don't want to be every Fairchild bride, I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I wanted to be Ellie, marrying Garrett. Not some interchangeable society wife wearing the family jewels and keeping up appearances. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of my words hung in the air between us, the truth of them undeniable. "What are you saying?" Garrett finally asked, his voice barely audible through the door. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what came next. "I'm saying the wedding is off, Garrett. I won't marry someone who would deceive me like this, who would put his ex-girlfriend's feelings above mine, who would let his mother dictate our relationship." "Ellie, no," he said urgently, and I heard him try the door handle, finding it locked. "You're overreacting. We can work through this. Marriage is about compromise." "Compromise?" I repeated incredulously. "This isn't about compromise. This is about trust, respect, and honesty. All things you've shown me you don't value." "That's not fair," he protested. "One mistake doesn't define our entire relationship." "This isn't one mistake," I said firmly. "It's a pattern of you, prioritizing your family's expectations and your own comfort over my feelings. And I won't spend my life coming in third place in my own marriage. Ellie, please." His voice cracked slightly, a genuine emotion I hadn't expected. "I love you. Don't do this." For a moment, my resolve wavered. The pain in his voice, the history we shared, the life we'd planned. Was I really ready to walk away from all of it? Then I remembered the texts. "Save me a dance?" His eager response, the secrecy, the emerald earrings that now felt like a deliberate reminder of what I couldn't, of what I wasn't. "I loved you too, Garrett," I said quietly. "But love isn't enough without respect, and you haven't respected me or our relationship." "So that's it?" he asked, anger beginning to replace his pleading tone. 500 guests, both our families, all the planning? You're just throwing it all away because I invited an old friend to our wedding?" "An old friend," I repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity. "Is that really how you see her? Because your texts tell a different story." "You're reading too much into those," he insisted. "They were harmless." "Then why hide them from me?" I challenged myself. Why the secrecy if it was all so innocent? He had no answer for that, and we both knew it. "The wedding is off," I repeated, my voice stronger now. "But the reception is still happening." "What?" His confusion was evident. "How does that work?" "I'll be making an announcement," I explained. "I think our guests deserve to know why they won't be witnessing a ceremony today. Why did they come all this way for nothing?" "You wouldn't," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "That would humiliate me, my family. I'm not doing it to humiliate you," I said truthfully. "I'm doing it because I deserve to. Tell my side of the story before you or your mother can spin this into something that makes me the villain. I deserve that much." "This is insane," Garrett said, and I heard him pacing now, agitation evident in his movements. "People don't do this. Cancel the wedding but keep the reception. It's tacky. Inappropriate." "You know what's inappropriate?" I asked, my anger flaring again. "Inviting your ex-girlfriend to our wedding without telling me. Having your mother bring me family jewels while knowing you've been lying to me for months. That's inappropriate, Garrett." "So, this is revenge," he said flatly. "You want to punish me publicly?" "No," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "This isn't about punishing you. It's about me standing in my truth. It's about me respecting myself enough to walk away from something that isn't right, even at the 11th hour." Silence fell again, stretching longer this time. When Garrett finally spoke, his voice had changed. The pleading was gone, replaced by cold anger. "If you do this, if you go through with this public spectacle, we're done. Completely. No chance of working things out later." It was meant as a threat, a last-ditch effort to control the situation, but all it did was confirm I was making the right choice. "We're already done, Garrett," I said quietly. "You ended us the moment you invited Vanessa to our wedding. I'm just making it official." Another pause, then the sound of movement, him stepping away from the door. "My mother was right about you," he said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. "You were never Fairchild material." The words were meant to wound, to diminish me one last time. But all I felt was relief. Relief that I wouldn't be spending my life trying to become Fairchild material, whatever that meant. "No," I agreed. "I wasn't, and thank God for that." I heard him move toward the outer door, his footsteps quick and angry. Before he left, he delivered one last parting shot. "Have fun with your little announcement, Ellie. I won't be there to see it." The door slammed, the sound reverberating through both rooms, and just like that, it was done. The confrontation I'd been dreading was over. My engagement officially ended. I leaned back against the connecting door, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, the emotional toll of the conversation finally hitting me. It was over. Really, truly over. The connecting door opened carefully from my side, Laurel, Madeline, and Julia peering in with concerned expressions. "Are you okay?" Laurel asked, kneeling beside me. I looked up at my friends, these women who had stood by me through this emotional whiplash, who were prepared to help me execute whatever crazy plan I'd concocted. A rush of gratitude overwhelmed me. "I'm okay," I said, surprised to find it wasn't a lie. "Actually, I think I'm better than okay." Julia extended a hand, helping me to my feet. "You were magnificent," she declared. Clear, direct, no room for his manipulation. I was taking mental notes. "He's not coming to the reception," I said, still processing his parting words. "He said he won't be there for the announcement." "Of course he won't," Madeline scoffed. "He's a coward, always has been." "It doesn't matter," Laurel said firmly. "Whether he's there or not, this is about you speaking your truth, not him hearing it." She was right, I realized. This announcement, this reception, it wasn't about Garrett anymore. It was about me reclaiming my narrative, my dignity, my future. "So, what now?" I asked, looking at the three of them. "We have about—" I checked my watch. 7 hours until the reception was supposed to start. The ceremony is officially canceled, but everything else is still happening. "Now," Julia said, a spark of excitement lighting her eyes. "We pivot. We turn this wedding reception into something else entirely, something about new beginnings, not failed endings." "A non-wedding celebration," Madeline suggested. "A dodged-a-bullet party." "And I chose myself gala," Laurel added. Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "I like all of those, but first things first. We need to inform the key players. My parents, the officiant, the venue." "And we need to decide what you're wearing," Julia said practically. "Not the wedding dress, obviously, but something spectacular. Something that says, 'I made a difficult choice, and I stand by it.'" As they began brainstorming, throwing out ideas for outfits and announcements and reception adjustments, I felt a strange sense of liberation washing over me. This wasn't the wedding day I'd planned, not even close, but somehow it felt more authentic, more true to who I was than the elaborate society affair Margaret had orchestrated. My phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "Just checking in. How did it go with Garrett?" I smiled, typing back. "Wedding's officially off. But the reception is still on. Care to be my +1 to my non-wedding celebration?" His response came almost immediately. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Just tell me. When and where?" As I slipped my phone back into my pocket, I caught sight of the jewelry box containing the Fairchild sapphires, still sitting on the dresser where Margaret had left it. The family heirloom that had been meant to mark me as one of them, to symbolize my acceptance into their world. "What about these?" I asked, holding up the box. "I should return them, right?" Julia considered the sapphires thoughtfully. "Well, technically, they're not yours since you're not becoming a Fairchild. But on the other hand, they'd make excellent collateral," Laurel finished, a mischievous glint in her eye. Insurance that the Fairchilds behave themselves. At the reception, I laughed, the sound startling me with its genuineness. I'm not holding the family jewels hostage, Laurel. Fine, she conceded with a dramatic sigh. But at least wear them to the reception. One last little act of rebellion before returning. Them! The idea was tempting. Showing up to my non-wedding reception wearing the Fairchild sapphires, claiming them one last time on my own terms. But it felt petty, small. And I was trying to be bigger than that. No, I decided, closing the box with finality. I'll return them now, before things get any more complicated. They were never really meant for me anyway. I handed the box to Madeline. Can you take these to Margaret? Tell her there's been a change of plans. The wedding is off. She can keep her family heirlooms. Madeline took the box, her expression solemn. I'd be honored to deliver that message. As she left on her mission, I turned to Julia and Laurel, a new sense of purpose filling me. Now, let's plan a reception. I have a story to tell and a future to claim. The next few hours would be chaotic, emotional, possibly even painful. But for the first time since finding those emerald earrings, I felt like I was fully in control of my own story. And that was worth celebrating, wedding or no wedding. The sunlight streamed through the windows of my studio, bathing the space in warm, golden light. I adjusted my camera, focusing on the couple seated on the vintage love seat I'd positioned against the exposed brick wall. They were gazing at each other, oblivious to my presence, lost in their own private moment. Perfect. Clicked the shutter, capturing that genuine connection. The kind that can't be posed or manufactured. The kind I'd once thought I had with Garrett. Beautiful, I said, lowering my camera. That's exactly what I was looking for. Natural, authentic. The bride-to-be, because this was an engagement session, not a wedding, turned to me with a radiant smile. Do you think we got enough good ones? I'm always so worried I'll blink or make a weird face. Trust me, Alicia, I assured her. We've got plenty of stunning shots. You two make my job easy. As I showed them a few previews on my camera's display screen, I marveled at how much had changed in a year. Ellie Bennett Photography had gone from a modest side business to a thriving studio specializing in engagement photos and elopements. Turns out, there was a substantial market for couples who wanted intimate, authentic photography without all the traditional wedding industry pressure. I'd found my niche, and ironically, I had my non-wedding to thank for it. After reviewing the final shots and setting expectations for delivery, I walked the happy couple out, promising their gallery would be ready within 2 weeks. As the door closed behind them, I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Another successful session. Another couple excited about their future together. My phone buzzed with a text from Noah. Still on for dinner tonight? I have news. I smiled, typing back quickly. Absolutely. Just finished with clients. Meet you at Vincenzo's at 7. His response came immediately. Perfect. Can't wait to see you. A flutter of anticipation rose in my chest. The same flutter I'd felt every time we'd made plans over the past year. Some things didn't change, even after months of dating. And Noah was definitely something I didn't want to change. After my non-wedding reception, Noah and I had cautiously begun rebuilding our relationship, both of us wary of moving too quickly after my near miss with Garrett. But some connections prove themselves over time, growing stronger with each challenge rather than weaker. Noah and I had that kind of connection, one based on mutual respect, shared values, and a history that included both the good and the difficult. As I packed up my equipment, preparing to head home and get ready for dinner, my phone rang. Julia's name flashed on the screen. Perfect timing, I answered. I was just thinking about calling you. Were you now? She laughed. Let me guess. You want to know if I've made a decision about the dance studio offer. Among other things, I admitted. But mostly I wanted to check in. It's been 2 weeks since our last proper catch-up. Because someone is ridiculously busy with her booming photography business and disgustingly happy relationship, Julia teased. Some of us are still out here hustling for gigs and swiping through dating apps. Speaking of which, I segued smoothly, I might have someone for you to meet. One of Noah's colleagues from National Geographic, a writer who covers environmental issues, smart, passionate, newly single. Ellie Bennett, matchmaker extraordinaire, Julia groaned. Is this payback for that horrible blind date I set you, up on 2 years ago? Because if so, I've apologized repeatedly for not knowing he collected taxidermied rodents. I laughed, remembering the disastrous evening. No, this is genuine. He's actually normal, I promise. And he asked about you specifically after seeing your photo on my Instagram. Fine, she conceded with an exaggerated sigh. Set it up. But if he shows up with a stuffed squirrel, I'm sending you my therapy bill. Fair enough, I agreed. Now, about that studio offer? Julia had been offered the opportunity to take over a prestigious dance studio downtown, a significant step up from the freelance choreography work she'd been doing. It would mean putting down roots, committing to one location instead of bouncing between projects. I'm leaning toward yes, she admitted. It's scary putting all my eggs in one basket, but it's also the kind of opportunity I've been working toward for years. You should do it, I said without hesitation. You're ready for this, Jules. And selfishly, I'd love having you permanently based in the same city. That's part of the appeal, she agreed. Being closer to the people who matter. Speaking of which, have you heard anything from the Fairchild contingent lately? The abrupt change of subject caught me off guard. It had been months since I'd thought about Garrett or his family in any significant way. Not directly, I said, locking up the studio and heading toward my car. But I did see something online last week. Garrett and Vanessa are engaged. No way, Julia exclaimed. Already? It's barely been a year since, well, you know. Since our non-wedding? I supplied, comfortable enough now to name it directly. Yeah, they didn't waste time. The announcement was in the society pages of the Chronicle. Very tasteful, very Fairchild approved. And how do you feel about that? Julia asked, her tone shifting from teasing to concerned. I considered the question as I slid into my car, genuinely taking stock of my emotions. Honestly, I feel nothing. Maybe a vague sense of relief that I dodged that particular bullet, but no anger, no jealousy, no regret. They deserve each other. That, Julia declared, is what healing sounds like. I'm proud of you, Elle. The warmth of her approval meant more than I could express. Julia had been there for me during the darkest moment of my life, stepping up without hesitation when I needed her most. Our friendship, once allowed to fade through neglect, had been rekindled into something stronger and more resilient than before. Thanks, Jules, I said, feeling a surge of gratitude, for everything. I don't know if I ever properly thanked you for what you did that day. Only about 100 times, she assured me. And anyway, it was the most excitement I'd had in years. How many people can say they helped orchestrate a non-wedding reception where the bride announced she'd dumped the groom for inviting his ex? It's still my favorite party story. I laughed, remembering the faces of the guests as I stood before them, not in my wedding gown but in a striking red dress, explaining why there would be no ceremony but inviting them to stay and celebrate anyway. Celebrate courage, self-respect, and new beginnings. Most had stayed. Some, primarily Garrett's family friends, had left in scandalized silence. But enough people, my friends, my family, even some of Garrett's more independent-minded relatives, had remained to make the evening memorable for all the right reasons. And Vanessa? She'd slipped out during my speech, the emerald earrings I'd had delivered to her place sitting clutched tightly in her hand. I'd never spoken to her directly, and now I never would. That chapter was closed. Anyway, Julia continued, I should let you go. I know you've got your hot date with adventure photographer extraordinaire tonight. Tell Noah I said hi, and that if he breaks your heart, I know 37 ways to make a body disappear. I'll convey that exact message, I promised dryly. Talk tomorrow? Count on it. Love you, Elle. Love you too, Jules. As I ended the call and drove toward my apartment, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of Garrett's betrayal had faded more quickly than I'd expected, replaced by a growing sense of self-assurance and purpose. The non-wedding reception, intended initially as a dramatic statement, had evolved into something far more meaningful, a reclamation of my own narrative, a declaration of my worth, and it had led to unexpected professional success. A guest at the reception, impressed by my story and intrigued by my background in photography, had commissioned me for her daughter's engagement photos. That one session had led to another and another, until I'd found myself with a growing clientele and a reputation for capturing authentic moments rather than posed perfection. 6 months after the non-wedding, I'd quit my day job and opened my own studio. The risk had paid off beyond my wildest expectations. At home, I showered and changed for dinner, choosing a simple blue dress that Noah had once said brought out the color of my eyes. As I applied minimal makeup, I studied my reflection in the mirror. I looked happy, relaxed, confident. A far cry from the shell-shocked woman who had discovered emerald earrings on her vanity a year ago. The emeralds. I hadn't thought about them in months. Whatever had happened to them after Vanessa took them from the reception, I didn't know or care. They belonged to the past, like so many other things I'd willingly left behind. Vincenzo's was busy when I arrived, the small Italian restaurant humming with conversation and the clinking of glasses. Noah was already there, seated at our usual corner table, looking slightly nervous as he scanned the crowd. When he spotted me, his face lit up in that way that still made my heart skip. "Hey, you," he said, standing to greet me with a kiss. "You look beautiful." "Thanks," I smiled, settling into my chair. "So do you. How was the meeting with the editor?" Noah had spent the day pitching a major photo essay about climate change's impact on coastal communities. It was a passion project he'd been developing for months, one that could significantly advance his already impressive career. It was illuminating, he said, a cryptic smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "But let's order first. I'm starving, and this news is best served with pasta." Intrigued by his obvious excitement, I agreed, and we placed our usual orders. Carbonara for him, mushroom risotto for me, a bottle of the house red to share. As we waited for our food, we fell into easy conversation about our days, our upcoming weekend plans, the latest antics of Mrs. Goldstein's cat that Noah had somehow befriended on his morning runs. It was comfortable, this rhythm we'd established. Comfortable but never boring, secure but never stifling. Nothing like the polished performance my relationship with Garrett had become in its final months. "Okay," I said after our food arrived and we'd taken our first appreciative bites. "I can't stand the suspense anymore. What's this news that requires an in-person dinner announcement?" Noah set down his fork, his expression shifting to something more serious. The editor loved the coastal community's pitch. "Noah, that's fantastic," I exclaimed, genuinely thrilled for him. I knew they would. It's brilliant work. "It is," he agreed, without false modesty. "But there's more. They want to expand it into a 6-part series, covering different regions around the world." My excitement dimmed slightly as I processed the implications. "Around the world? So you'd be traveling a lot more?" "For about a year? Yes," he confirmed, watching my reaction carefully. "Extended stays in Southeast Asia, South America, the Pacific, islands, Northern Europe, Africa, and Australia." "Wow," I managed, trying to sound supportive despite the sinking feeling in my stomach. "That's incredible. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Noah reached across the table, taking my hand. It is. But here's the thing, I don't want to do it alone. For a moment, I didn't understand what he was saying. Then his meaning hit me with full force. You want me to come with you? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. All of it. He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. Every destination, every adventure. I want you there, capturing your own perspectives, building your portfolio, experiencing it all with me. The magazine's even open to including some of your work alongside mine, a dual narrative of images. But my studio, I protested weakly, even as excitement began to bubble up inside me. My clients would still be there when we return, he finished. And in the meantime, technology exists. You could maintain connections, take select local assignments when we're back between trips, maybe even expand into travel photography yourself. Think about it, Elle. Your eye for authentic human moments combined with these incredible global settings. The possibility unfolded before me, breathtaking in its scope. A year of travel, of creative growth, of experiencing the world's wonders with the man I loved. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. This isn't a decision you have to make tonight, Noah said gently, sensing my overwhelm. Take some time, think it through. Talk to Julia, to your parents, to Laurel. Consider all the angles. I squeezed his hand, grateful for his understanding. It's a lot to process. But Noah, just the fact that you want me there, that you see me as part of this journey. Of course I do, he said simply. You're part of all my journeys now, Elle. The big ones and the small ones. Something in his tone, in the steady warmth of his gaze, told me there was more to this conversation than a professional opportunity. Sure enough, he reached into his pocket with his free hand and placed a small velvet box on the table between us. Unlike the emerald earrings of a year ago, this box filled me with joy rather than dread. I knew without opening it that whatever was inside represented a future I genuinely wanted, not one I was settling for. This isn't a proposal, Noah clarified quickly. Not yet. It's a promise, a placeholder until we're both ready. But I wanted you to have something concrete, something that says no matter where this adventure takes us, whether you come with me for this project or not, I'm committed to figuring it out together. With trembling fingers, I opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, unadorned except for a small compass rose etched into its surface. It was perfect, meaningful without being ostentatious, a symbol of direction and purpose rather than possession or status. Noah, I breathed, emotion making it difficult to say more. You don't have to wear it, he assured me. I know it might seem too soon after everything with Garrett. I just wanted you to have it, to know where I stand. I slipped the ring onto my right hand, where it fit as if it had been made for me. It's not too soon, I said, meeting his gaze with certainty. Not when it's right. His smile was like the sunrise, slow and warm and full of promise. So, adventure partner, for this project and beyond? At that moment, I knew my answer, to the travel opportunity and to the larger question it represented. A year ago, I had chosen myself over a relationship that diminished me. Now I was choosing a partnership that expanded my world rather than restricting it. Yes, I said, the word carrying the weight of all I felt for him. To all of it, yes. Later that night, cuddled together on Noah's couch, I texted Julia a photo of the compass ring and the simple message, plot twist, I'm going global for a year. Adventure photography with Noah. Ring is a promise, not an engagement, yet. Call me tomorrow for details. Her response came seconds later. Shut up. This is the best non-wedding follow-up story ever. Also, dibs on maid of honor when it is an engagement. Also, I'm so happy for you. I'm literally crying in my yoga pants. I laughed, showing Noah the message. Julia approves, apparently. Was there ever any doubt? He asked, kissing the top of my head. She's been your biggest cheerleader since day one. Second biggest, I corrected, tilting my face up to his. You're the one who told me I deserved better, even when that meant not choosing you. I wanted you to be sure, he said simply. To know your own worth so completely that you'd never settle again, whether that was with me or someone else. Well, mission accomplished, I assured him, holding up my right hand so the compass ring caught the light. I know exactly what I deserve now. And somehow, miraculously, it turned out to be you. As Noah pulled me closer, I marveled at the journey that had brought me here. From the brink of a marriage that would have slowly eroded my sense of self, to the threshold of an adventure that promised to expand it. From emerald earrings that symbolizes deception to a compass ring that represented honest direction. 1 year ago, I had discovered that my fiancé secretly invited his ex to our wedding, a betrayal that had seemed like the end of my world. Instead, it had been the beginning of a better one. The bride swap that had started as an impulsive revenge plan had evolved into something far more meaningful, a swap of the life I thought I wanted for the one I truly needed. Sometimes, the most painful, revelations turn out to be the greatest gifts. And sometimes, when one door closes dramatically in your face, it's because you're meant to step through a different one entirely. One that leads to horizons you never imagined possible. As Noah and I began planning our globe-spanning adventure, that night I silently thanked the emerald earrings, the wedding that never happened, and even Garrett and Vanessa. Without them, I might never have found the courage to demand more from life, from love, and most importantly, from myself. The bride had been swapped indeed, not just for a day, but for a lifetime. The woman who had nearly walked down the aisle into a compromised future had been replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more certain of her own value. And that, I reflected, as Noah kissed me beneath the soft lamplight of his living room, was the most beautiful plot twist of all. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.